Are you antsy for another Reds offseason move? Well, we're going to check in on the Reds offseason plan because we heard from Nick Carr. We've got that for you on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr. His name is Steve Offenbaker, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. And we've been hosting this podcast together for now on to our third season. And collectively, Steve and I have been talking about the Reds for like a billion years. We love the Cincinnati Reds team, and you do too. That's why you're here, because you're the Reds fan that knows what happened. You want to know why. And on today's podcast, we're going to tell you why things feel like they're a little bit slow. Right? We all want the Reds to make that big move. We want them to get that big outfielder. We wanted them to do it yesterday. We wanted them to do it last week. That's just not how the baseball offseason works. We're going to tell you why you need to just relax a little bit. Maybe put up a Christmas tree or something. That's coming up here in just a moment. We're also going to get into a trade proposal that a certain former general manager made of how the Reds could acquire Luis Robert and why even Steve is on board with it. And then later on in the show, we are going to look around the division, and we're just going to make fun of everybody because we are 99 days. We're officially under the 100. We're under the century mark for opening day. Can't wait. Today's episode is brought to you by the College Football Playoff because it's here. And you don't want to miss a moment of the action. The College Football Playoff presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games, December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and HBO Max. All right, Steve, College Football Playoffs aside, let's look at what the Reds have been waiting on, been not doing. There's not been a whole lot of action here recently, and that's got a lot of folks feeling a certain way. I've seen some people going as far to say is they don't have any money. They're not right. They're telling us that they're not doing anything this offseason. I don't know where they got that information from, but that's where Reds country is right now because we haven't seen an outfielder enter the building. And what I want to tell everybody about that is it's okay. R-E-L.
Oh, no. Stop it. So the next thing you're going to be talking about drones. Don't do that.
Cayenne pepper drinks and stuff like that.
Stop it. No, listen, the Reds have done stuff, Jeff. They fixed the starting rotation. They brought Nick Martinez back on a qualifying offer for over $20 million, $21 million to be exact. They went out and got Brady Singer from the Kansas City Royals for Jonathan India. They made a big move there. They really solidified the starting rotation. They made guys that were going to be young starting pitchers competing for rotation spots now be spare parts ready to step up if there is an injury or if something goes awry. They made big strides there for a team that at one point last season we talked about had every single starting pitcher from opening day either traded or injured. You can't have too much pitching. So the Reds did some things and they did it early. I think all of our dismay, mine included. I post the "come on, do something" meme a lot with them poking the Reds logo with the stick. I want an outfielder. I want a right-handed power hitting outfielder. And the absence of that, I think, makes us feel like maybe they're not doing anything, but they've done stuff. And right. Nick Carr checked in yesterday talking about the fact that he is still actively working the lines, trying to get something done.
Yeah, and he had some good quotes. He was on the Reds Hot Stove League show on 700 WLW, and he was talking. He said, we have a lot of conversation over the last few weeks just to try and bolster our position player group. Right now, we haven't gotten anything, and we haven't made a ton of progress at this point, but we've had a lot of conversations, and we know what the landscape looks like. It's just trying to figure out how to make a deal, whether it's a free agent or a trade, that can help this club. He also went on to say from a trade market, a lot of teams are looking for major league pieces for major league pieces. So, MLB players for MLB players, they don't want prospects. When you're doing that, he said, I can make a trade and fill a hole, but when I fill a hole, I open up another one. And I think that's the important part of this because the Jonathan India for Brady Singer trade was a position of depth where you had a guy who can play the middle infield, not really sure where else he could play, and really he could just play second base. And he's an on-base guy, but it feels like the Reds have a couple of those. And you get a pitcher that you need. They don't have another situation like that. Like, there's not another Jonathan India on this roster where you can just go trade that guy. And so I kind of am okay with this. And I know that we've discussed the whole idea of, well, maybe you could go trade like Nick Lodolo or somebody like that for Luis Robert. But I love even further that he goes into that, because Tommy Thrall even asked, well, you acquired a couple of pitchers. Do you feel like that's a position you could trade from? And his quote on that was rather brilliant. He says, you've got 8 guys in Graham Ashcraft, Rhett Lauder, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, Hunter Green, Brady Singer, Nick Martinez, and Carson Spires, who have all made starts. You look at Spires, Ashcraft, Lodolo, Green, and Abbott, they all missed time with injuries. You're going to need more than 5. If you get through the season with 5 starters, you're extremely lucky. When you look at that depth, is it depth, or is it you need all these guys to get through the season? And thank God, I think he's learned something, Steve, finally.
Yeah, and interesting that Carson Spires' name is being bantered about there. I don't see him
starts, although there were some other players that made starts too.
I think Spires might be working on being a bullpen guy. But I mean, to Nick's point, you need the depth, you need the arms. We've done the math on previous episodes, Jeff, just looking at the starts that we know the rotation are going to miss. Hunter Green's not getting to 32, maybe 27, maybe 28. There's going to be about 4 starts that you've got to cover there. Say, as you go down the line, you find a couple more starts. So they automatically need 6. 5 is not the magic number. They automatically need 6. And you're going to probably need a 7th and an 8th at some point in time during the year, because guys get nicked up. And a show we're going to do at some point in time this offseason, talking about pitching injuries, will tell you that,
you can
all of those guys are going to have some downtime somewhere along the way during the season. So for me, you're right. I think Nick Krall is approaching this exactly correct. And it doesn't mean he's not doing anything, but there's a lot of nuance to what he did say. There's a lot of information there if we really want to look for it. And that is that teams are looking for major league talent for major league talent. That's different than other years. The Reds have, we've talked about the haul of prospect capital, right? And I don't think the problem right now is that Nick Krall is a prospect hugger and doesn't want to trade anybody from the minor leagues. I think that he just can't find a deal for the guys we have in the minor leagues. They're asking for names, guys. They're asking for, dudes on the big league roster, and you can do the math there of what those young talented players' names are. And the Reds are not trading those guys.
No, because there's so many of them that we just don't know what we don't know about them. All we know is their scouting report. We know that they're talented. We know they've got the ability. Let's see them blossom in a Reds uniform. And I'm okay with that. But the other part of this, and kind of going back to where Reds country is and why we're feeling a little bit impatient right now, I would like to encourage you a little bit, because let's consider 2 of the most busiest off seasons that the Reds have had in the last decade, which was last offseason and the offseason in between 2019 and 2020. You remember that was the offseason that the Reds did a lot of spending. They signed Mike Moustakas. They signed Nick Castellanos. They signed all these different guys. Just looking at this point here today, December 18th forward, in that offseason, Steve, the Reds signed Wade Miley on this day in 2019. The Reds then also went out and signed, and I know, we know that, the future after this point wasn't as great as we hoped it would be, but they signed Shogo Akiyama on January 6th. They also signed Nick Castellanos on January 27th, which means the seminal day of one of our favorite Reds players in the last 5 years. Really, you could even expand that out and say that he's one of our favorite Reds players the last decade or so. We're still like over a month away from that point happening. This offseason for Major League Baseball is just so different from other sports, and we are so footballized. Ironically, the college football playoff is our presenting sponsor today, but we're so footballized in believing that it's week to week and you got to go fast and you got to go now. Major League Baseball doesn't work that way. So just because the Reds haven't done anything as December 18th about the outfield doesn't mean that they won't, and they're just going to leave it there and they're going to show up in Goodyear in February with the same guys that they had last year.
I feel like they've got a month, if we're being honest, from now. So let's say January 18th. Much beyond that, that Castellanos signing, I remember, was a little late. Like, we were already starting to gear up for spring training. We were only a few weeks out at that point from pitchers and catchers reporting. So I think realistically, there's a window right now of about a month to get something done. We saw the Bellinger deal with the Yankees. Does that mean they're done looking for outfielders? Does that free up Santander? I don't know. The Yankees were willing to, as you reminded me, give Juan Soto $700 million. So they have some money to spend since he did not sign with them. But there's time. There is time. It's definitely not time to panic. I'm not going to start panicking until about January 15th. And then, that right-handed power hitting outfield drum, that thing's going to get loud because somebody's going to have to get signed at that point. But I'm not ready. I'm not ready to say, it's a total failure. Nick Krall's not doing his thing. I think Nick Krall's doing his thing right now. He's just being patient, and that's how it goes.
Well, I think there's a positive development on a potential outfielder that the Reds could get, at least based on a former general manager's perspective. We'll get into that coming up next.
The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics. The world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing. That's teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and to be the healthiest, best version of you. SelectQuote's exclusive policies can reward you for that effort. Get the right insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon.
We are talking Cincinnati Reds baseball here today, every day, every week, every month, all year long, all throughout the offseason, getting you set for what should be a playoff year in 2025 for your Cincinnati Reds. And a big proponent, or at least a big part of a potential playoff team, would be a very good outfielder, a guy who would bolster the group. And while we differ on why Luis Robert is that guy, I think even you, who poo-poo the idea of a trade, would agree that Jim Bowden, that guy,
leather pants.
What he had a proposal that if this were the trade that's on the table, I think Nick Krall does it yesterday. He said that the Reds could acquire Luis Robert from the Chicago White Sox for 2 prospects. Now, it would be one of Cam Collier or Sal Stewart, and then you would tack on shortstop prospect Tyson Lewis, who the Reds drafted last year out of high school. You're talking about 2 guys who, Sal Stewart and Cam Collier are still a couple of years away. Tyson Lewis is just beginning his minor league career. This for me is fine. I would do this yesterday, and you're getting a guy that immediately bumps up the prestige of your outfield. I'm all in on that.
Oh, this is better than the deal you floated, which was Cam Collier and Nick Lodolo for Luis Robert.
And which might be what's on the table. And
I'm a hard no on that. You just cannot trade major league pitching for a guy that might give you 50 games, might give you 150 games. You just don't know. This deal, however, is for a bunch of guys that we don't know for sure they're going to give the Reds any games. And the Reds, like we talked about, the Reds window is right now. They're not early. They're not ahead of the curve. It is right now. So for me, win now. And if that means trading Cam Collier, and that's fine. You can't trade major league talent for Robert. I still don't think Robert is the best choice. I still think the best move here is to go out and sign a guy and Teoscar today, please get it done. But
Right.
if you've got to trade for somebody, I like this deal a lot better because the guys you're talking about here, Jeff, you hit the nail on the head. They're so far away. You know, one of these guys was in high school last year. So let's go for it. If the Reds are serious about winning, that's how you do it. Go for it. I would be able to tolerate that deal a lot better than if it included major leaguers.
And I'm telling you, Luis Robert comes here and he's the number 3 hitter. He's an all-star and probably in the MVP conversation. But I also look at the other side of that because we have said multiple times that we want the Reds to sign out, a free agent outfielder, Teoscar, Santander, somebody like that. And while they might be getting priced out of that, there's still the argument to be made that they shouldn't be priced out of it. But what's most likely to happen? We focus a lot on what we want to happen. And I think that's where the impatience of Reds country comes from. Reds country knows what this team needs. They understand its deficiencies. And so they're like, just go fix it. Go fix it already. Go fix it. And the problem, and we didn't get into this in the first part of today's show, but the problem also with the Major League offseason is that agents of players know they can wait. They're going to get a better offer in a week. They're going to get a better offer in a couple of weeks. That's why Juan Soto, when free agency opened after the World Series ended, Juan Soto didn't go sign with somebody. He waited to get all of the offers in and to get to a point where he was comfortable. Every free agent is different. And I remember a couple of years ago, Steve, whenever Manny Machado and Bryce Harper were on the free agents, were both free agents. And everybody was just like, what's taking them so long? They almost got to February before they signed. And a lot of it doesn't just have to do with, well, teams are being cheap. It's players are waiting out the market. They are trying to set their own price. And some of them, their agents, Scott Boras, fills their heads with dreams of grandeur, and they're about to get El Dorado here in this free agency. But in some cases, a lot of teams are like, yeah, no, I just don't see it. So there's definitely a difference of opinion as far as how much a player thinks he's worth and how much a team thinks that player should be worth. And that is where you see the reserved timeline nature of this offseason.
I wish we were hearing a little bit more out of Chicago about what it is. And I guess that's just wishful thinking to know what it is they're asking right now. The leaks have been interesting because the leaks have been about who they're checking in on as far as the Reds go, but not who's in the conversation. And we usually see that when one side's trying to move the needle, right? And we're not seeing that, which leads me to believe there's still like active dialogue going on. There's still in-depth conversations happening, and nobody's trying to force the other team over the finish line, so to speak. So I believe Nick Krall when he says right now that he's having these conversations and having tons of interaction with other teams trying to get a deal done. I guess when we start hearing names, which is why it's interesting that Bowden is the one leading with this deal. I think it'll come from a beat writer, or
yes.
you know what I mean. It's not going to come from Jim Bowden,
or a Heyman or a Morosi, which I know that we tend to say exercise patience with their updates, but there are sometimes that they are dead on, because I think it was Morosi that broke the Singer and India trade like a couple of days before it happened.
So it'll be one of those guys. It's not going to be Jim Bowden. I'm waiting patiently. I think that's the moral of the story. Patience, grasshopper. We're going to need to chant a little bit. Everybody everybody take a deep breath.
Exactly.
We're going to have to ride this out a little bit. Christmas is coming. And while it would be lovely if the Reds gave us a Christmas gift of an outfielder, I don't think it's going to happen before Christmas. I think we're going to get through the holidays and get into January, and then something will happen.
And to your point, I mean, looking at the patience side of things from the White Sox perspective, they aren't just talking to the Reds. Everybody who's looking for an outfielder, everybody who has talked to Juan Soto, Teoscar Hernandez, and Anthony Santander has talked to the White Sox about Luis Robert. That's just how this goes. So with that, he's probably fielding multiple different offers on the table, trying to figure out who he can get more out of. And on his side of this, Chris Getz, the president of baseball operations for the White Sox, this is his last move he can make. If you look at that roster, and he already traded his ace to the Red Sox for a couple of good prospects there, there's nobody else that's going to make the kind of impact in a trade that Luis Robert can make. And it's not close. It's not like, they got a guy who could probably bring one. Like, you remember a couple of years ago, we had Luis Castillo and we had Tyler Mahle. And when we traded both of them, we really felt good about the prospect haul that the Reds received. This is their Tyler Mahle. And so are they trying to do what the Reds did with Tyler Mahle? That's going to be the interesting question about this, because, I mean, we feel pretty good about how the Reds did in that deal. The White Sox want that feeling too. I don't know, and that's probably why these negotiations have been pushed out. He was rumored to be traded back at the deadline, and the White Sox didn't trade him. So Chris Getz is waiting for somebody to just wildly overpay for him. And if that doesn't happen, I do wonder, as we get closer to spring training, if they get a little bit more, not urgency, desperate maybe is the word, if they push a trade through. Because, but the other part of this is you still have 3 years of control with him. Like, they can continue to wait this out, which is what makes it so frustrating from the perspective of the acquiring team's fan bases, like us.
No, there is a scenario here where the White Sox go into spring training with Luis Robert as an outfielder. Right. They don't have to be in a hurry. I would imagine they don't do that. I would imagine they try and get a deal done, but it could happen. And, the White Sox, oh boy, the White Sox, they could lose more games this year than they did last year.
What was it? Our Locked On White Sox host, Todd Welter, was saying, he was just like, guys, they could win 42 games this year and it'll be an improvement, because they only won 41 last year.
Right. So. It's that team, man, rough times on the South side, but they don't have to do anything. So, and they're not the only team Nick Krall's talking to. Let's be clear about that. He's
Angels are out there
looking to other teams. He's talking to the Angels. He's talking to other teams. It's a wait and see game, Jeff, and that's not fun. I want a new outfielder for Christmas, Jeffrey.
I do too, because when you look around the division, there's definitely been some moves that kind of, I think, are fueling the impatience that everybody has here in Reds country, because there's one team that has made just a super impactful move that kind of has me thinking they might be the top team in the division right now. And then there's one team that hasn't done a thing. And believe it or not, it's not the Pirates. The best way to get into all of the action with whatever season it is in the sporting world is with FanDuel. Seriously, I mean, even with hockey going on, I love getting into some hockey prop bets. You've got how many points that a player can score. Are they going to score 2 or more points, or are they going to get a goal that night? How many saves is a goalie going to have? Plus, you've also got great futures on Major League Baseball. Look, they still continue to disrespect Terry Francona. They still continue to disrespect these Cincinnati Reds, and the odds keep getting longer and longer, which means the value keeps going up when it comes to the NL pennant, when it comes to the World Series. I'm telling you, just throw a couple of bucks on the Reds, and when they start going off in like April and May, people are going to start being like, oh, hey, maybe we had them pegged incorrectly. Better than they do. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on and check out all that they have to offer as the NFL heads toward the playoffs, as the college football playoff gets rolling. FanDuel is the place to be. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. Never waste a hunch again, and go to FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. If you can't watch us on YouTube, you can listen to us on your favorite podcasting app. We're seriously on all of them. Make sure that you subscribe today. And Steven wanted to kind of close out today's show by having a conversation about the rest of the teams in the NL Central, because while last year wasn't the best of years. I mean, the best Central in Major League Baseball was clearly the American League Central, not the National League Central. But it's not like we compare division to division. But when you look around the rest of the division, the Cardinals got better, but they were meh. The Pirates are the Pirates. The Cubs, and then the Brewers just did what Brewers do. But the Brewers have gotten worse this offseason. I know that there's some people that said that they traded Devin Williams, they got back Nestor Cortez, and they somehow got better in that trade. I don't buy it. I think Nestor Cortez is just a fine pitcher. Devin Williams is one of like the top closers in the league.
We all have been waiting with bated breath for Milwaukee to finally fall down for a minute.
Get that bubble to burst, baby.
Could they please just have an off year? That would be great. They're, I think, always going to be a concern, but I don't think they got better from that trade. You know who did get better, Jeff? And as bad as the baseball is on the south side of Chicago, the north side is going to have a good ball team this year. The Chicago Cubs are moving and shaking, and that deal with the Astros, I was not happy to see that go down because
I thought you were talking about the Carson Kelly signing, their backup catcher.
Yeah, no, that is not the deal that had me worried.
No, yeah, Kyle Tucker, that was a big
Kyle
trade.
Tucker was a big get. Yeah, he's a rental, and maybe it hurts them in the long run, but he is going to be good, and they are going to be good. And they're probably, if I had to pick right now, who's the favorite to win the division, it's them. I take the Cubs.
And they also have an interesting distinction in that I think they already have 3 pitchers in their starting rotation who are left-handed. So the way that the Reds match up with the Cubs right now is just very unappealing. There's definitely some things that the Reds need to do to close that gap. It feels like the Cubs are ahead. Feels like the Brewers are just ahead because they're the Brewers, and the devil magic that the Cardinals had in the mid-2000s are now it somehow moved to Milwaukee. I can't wait till it moves south there to Cincinnati. I want to see some of that. You know, maybe we just gotta go. I don't know how you get that, but the Brewers are up there too. That's why we need to see the Reds make those moves. I find it interesting though, Steve, just as interesting as the Cubs and what they have done to get better. And they had a great pitcher signing as well. Their roster, they seem to be making the right moves. The Cardinals haven't done a thing. And in fact, they've done less than a thing. They lost Paul Goldschmidt. He's a free agent. There are no rumors of them reuniting. There are rumors galore that they're going to trade Nolan Arenado, but there's a lot of people saying that the league is waiting to see where Alex Bregman goes, and then that will be a huge determining factor in where Arenado goes. But it's a win, not if scenario. They are wanting to trade Nolan Arenado, so it feels as though they are resetting a little bit. And I find this intriguing because we've talked with JD Haffern over at Locked On Cardinals a lot about this. Their farm system is not where it used to be. They are not the team that just gets rid of somebody and then brings up another guy that just is awesome. That's not who they are anymore.
And they're still trying to blow it up for sure. And you get why they would want to trade Nolan Arenado, but he's also not exactly
he's definitely on the downslope.
Nolan Arenado anymore. But he's still getting paid like it. So it's going to be some creativity, I think, for them to find a trade partner to get a deal done for him. But they're not looking to add. They are not looking to add more money. They are actually looking to cut. And I think they begin a major rebuild coming out of this offseason. So, which that's good for the Reds. But you're right that their devil magic, I think, is just moving north, and it scooted right past Ohio and has got up into Wisconsin. But I don't know, Jeff. I'm a little worried about the Chicago Cubs.
I have to look see what player changed hands. Maybe that's what happened when it came to the devil magic, just going north or something. I don't really know.
But for me, I look at this division. And while I'm worried about the Cubs, I don't think they're unbeatable. I think the Reds can still compete in this division. They're a productive outfielder away from this being a 2-horse race between the Reds and the Cubs, and that'll make for a fun summer of baseball. Just just the possibilities of hearing the sobs from Mason as the Reds continue to beat up on the Cubs. Just the thought of that warms my heart. Oh, we're only 99 days away. 99 days away.
99 days, baby. 99
warms
days. I mean,
my heart.
It's two teams that travel well to each other's stadiums whenever they play each other. That's why, and we were a year early on that. We thought that's what last year was going to be. So the Brewers definitely still have some moves up their sleeves, but I think they're the only ones that can upset the apple cart. The Pirates are doing some things. They're doing like little, peripheral moves. Like they were involved in that crazy trade where the Guardians like rapid fire made 2 trades where they got rid of Andres Jimenez and then they acquired Luis Ortiz from the Pirates, which we remember. I mean, Luis Ortiz pitched well against the Reds, but they got a infielder in Spencer Horwitz that a lot of reports are the Pirates have been wanting this guy. So they kind of went out and got a dude that they wanted really badly. We'll have to see exactly how that plays out for them. They had a lot of trouble with their first base spot last year. They had the bloated corpse of Rowdy Tellez playing out there. They had, they might as well went and got Lyle Overbay, from like 10 years ago and put him out there at first base, what they got from that position. Spencer Horwitz is going to upgrade that. But how does the rest of their lineup upgrade? Because the Pirates were very much similar to the Reds. It's annoying that if you took a 30,000-foot overview of the two franchises, how similar they are, where the Pirates have great young pitching and they couldn't score on a consistent basis, and they had higher expectations for how their season was supposed to finish, but they finished much lower than they thought. That sounds like the same thing here. But
on that depressing note, that is probably where we need to stop talking today. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Reds your first listen every day, folks. Go check out Locked On MLB with our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan. Sully has you covered on all of the national baseball happenings, all of the news. He digs into the past during the offseason, talks about the good old days. I love listening to Sully. You will too. If you want to check out his show, Locked On MLB, you can just jump into today's episode description. There's a link right there for you. You don't even have to search for it. We're going to continue to be in your podcast feeds. We're in off-season mode, so maybe a few less episodes for the next few weeks while the holidays are upon us, but we will keep our ears to the ground, I guess is the phrase. I was mixing up ears and eyes for a hot second there. But listen, we're looking for the rumors. We're looking for the news. We're going to gather up all of the information and bring it right back here to keep you locked on Reds every single day.
I'll try to keep my eyes to the ground and you keep your ears to the ground, and then we're going to have the ground covered.
Keep my ears peeled, and I don't think that's a thing.
Ears peeled and eyes perked.
Yeah.
Yeah.